An elderly man, believing his son was taking him to a nursing home, steps out of the car, only to be completely stunned. What did he see? This heartwarming twist will leave you speechless. Also, let us know in the comments where you're listening from, and if you enjoy stories like these, be sure to subscribe for more narratives. Roberto Morales, a 72-year-old widower, sat quietly in his small room in Austin, Texas, gazing out the window at the bustling streets below. Once a man of great pride, fiercely independent, he now felt the weight of age pressing down on him. His body had grown weaker, his memory hazier, and his heart heavier. Living with his son Alejandro and daughter-in-law Mariana, Roberto felt like a shadow of his former self. He hated being a burden. Every time he saw the grandson's room he now occupied, guilt gnawed at him. The rushed goodbyes in the morning, the meals delivered by Teresa, their kind neighbor, it all reminded him of how out of place he felt. A nursing home no longer seemed like an exile. To him, it felt like a solution, a relief. But deep down, beneath the quiet acceptance, Roberto longed for something he couldn't name. It wasn't just that he felt forgotten, he felt unnecessary. Life hadn't always been this way. His thoughts often drifted back to San Antonio, where he and his late wife, Sophia, had built a life together in their cozy wooden home. Sophia had been his joy, her laughter filling every corner. Roberto had adopted Alejandro when he married Sophia. The boy wasn't his by blood, but the first time Alejandro called him Papa, Roberto had sworn to give him everything. Together, they turned a modest house into a warm sanctuary, filled with love, hard work, and simple joys. Roberto, a man of the land, found solace in his garden, tending it with the help of his loyal horse, Palomo. Then, one tragic night, everything changed. A power outage left their home in darkness. Exhausted after a long day harvesting potatoes with Palomo, Roberto lit a candle, but he fell asleep. By the time he awoke, thick smoke had filled the air. Neighbors broke down the door, pulling him to safety, but the house, his memories, Sophia's belongings, everything was reduced to ashes. 24 days later, when Roberto woke in the hospital, the doctors told him he was lucky to be alive. But he didn't feel lucky. He felt empty. When Alejandro brought him to Austin to recover, Roberto left behind more than just a house. He left behind a part of his soul. Life in Alejandro's home wasn't what Roberto had hoped. Alejandro and Mariana were busy, distant. Teresa, the neighbor, took care of him, but even she didn't hide her thoughts. "They don't want you here, Roberto," she had said one day, shaking her head. "It's the same everywhere. Once we get old, our children don't want to deal with us." Her words haunted him. On his birthday, Roberto sat alone with a slice of cake Teresa had left. Alejandro and Mariana had wished him well that morning, but they hadn't stayed to celebrate. The loneliness was suffocating. Roberto had had enough. One evening, he cornered Alejandro. "Take me to a nursing home," he said firmly. "Sell my land in San Antonio. Use the money to pay for it. I don't want to be a burden to you or Mariana anymore." "Papa, not now," Alejandro sighed. "We'll talk about it later. I've had a long day." Roberto's frustration boiled over. "If you won't do it, I will. I'll find a nursing home myself." Alejandro simply patted his shoulder and walked away. Days turned to weeks, and his pleas seemed to vanish into thin air. Each night, he sat at the edge of his bed, whispering to the worn photograph of Sophia he kept tucked in his wallet. Then, on a bright Saturday morning, everything changed. Alejandro walked into Roberto's room carrying a crisp white shirt, neatly folded slacks, and a set of toiletries. Mariana followed, fresh towels and sheets tucked under her arm. "Pack your things, Papa," Alejandro said, his voice unreadable. "We're going on a trip." Roberto froze. His hands trembled. Finally, he thought, "They're taking me." He nodded silently, afraid to meet Alejandro's gaze. Afraid of seeing pity. Or worse, guilt. The car ride was silent. As they left Austin's city limits, the towering skyscrapers faded behind them, replaced by rolling hills and open farmland. The sight stirred something deep within Roberto, a distant memory of Sunday drives with Sophia, her laughter echoing in the wind. But as they drove further, a sense of unease crept in. There were no nursing homes out here. Where are we going? He finally asked, his voice unsteady. You'll see, Alejandro replied, a faint smile on his lips. The car eventually turned onto a gravel road, slowing as it pulled into a clearing. Alejandro killed the engine and turned to Roberto. We're here, Papa. Roberto hesitated as Alejandro helped him out of the car. His heart pounded. Then he saw it. His breath caught in his throat. His house. But not the charred remains he had last seen. No. It was whole, restored, gleaming in the sunlight as if it had been plucked from his memories and brought back to life. The white paint shimmered. The porch railings stood sturdy and new. The windows sparkled with impossible clarity. His knees buckled. Alejandro quickly caught him. Careful, Papa. Roberto could barely find his voice. What is this? Alejandro smiled. Welcome home, Papa. Tears welled in Roberto's eyes as he stepped inside. The interior was warm, familiar, yet renewed. On the mantel above the fireplace, a single framed photograph caught his eye. Sophia. On their wedding day. How? Roberto choked out. Alejandro's voice was thick with emotion. We never planned to send you to a nursing home, Papa. We knew how much this house meant to you. So we rebuilt it. Mariana rested a hand on his shoulder. The neighbors helped. Everyone wanted to bring you home. Alejandro handed him an envelope. Remember those papers you signed? Roberto nodded. You said it was to sell the land. Alejandro shook his head. No, Papa. They were construction permits. We needed your approval to start rebuilding. Roberto's hands trembled as he clutched the envelope. Then, a familiar sound reached his ears. A gentle whinny. His breath hitched. Is that? Alejandro grinned. Come and see. Roberto shuffled onto the porch, his heart pounding. There, tied to a post near the garden, stood Palomo, his beloved horse. Roberto's breath caught. You're alive? He hurried down the steps as fast as his legs could carry him, throwing his arms around the horse's strong neck. You're really here? Alejandro watched, his voice filled with warmth. You've never been a burden, Papa. You're our foundation. For the first time in years, Roberto allowed himself to believe it. As the sun dipped below the horizon, he whispered to Palomo, We're home. And for the first time in a long, long while, he truly felt it.